Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon. I will call to order the workshop session. First item of business is discussion and explanation of solar interconnection to the City of Lampasas electric system.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Wanted to take just a little bit of time out. We've had a lot of interest from the public, a lot of our citizens, some concerns that have arose lately, and so I thought it'd be a good time to step back, talk about solar for a little bit. I've done a little research, so I feel a little more in tune with kind of what we're doing. So to shed a little light, no pun intended, on the current solar facts, and to give you a little bit of background about what we're seeing from the city side, how that impacts our electric utility and what folks can expect if they make the decision to do solar, because as I know everybody's seen, there's a lot of solar signs around, just like roofing signs. So I thought it would be a good time to talk a little bit about that. So just to give you a few facts, the current solar facts in Texas, we've got projected growth for household solar is expected to be fivefold by 2027. So it's growing pretty rapidly. There's several states. We're basically the second state behind California with the most photovoltaic systems, which is the PV systems. 30% increase in those systems from 2020 to 2021. So in a year, that's what we've seen growth in Texas. So some facts here in Lampasas that I wanted to share. We've got 31 households currently with an agreement in place with solar panels on their house. Very few with any kind of battery backup or battery containment where they get generation off of their batteries and can reuse some of that power. And in 2022, I took a look at a lot of the bills. So we had several concerned citizens, and one in particular that came in and we talked with, and which kind of helped open the door for me to really do some digging and to try to find out, how does this impact our residents? So a typical city permit to install a solar system costs $397. And then, as I mentioned, there's an approved interconnect agreement. Typically, I'm reviewing those. It consists of our contract with the resident as well as their engineered specs and the design for the system that we review. So we're doing those things now. We've got a good electric group over there. Our superintendent, Wayne Sanders, spends time reviewing those too, just to verify, hey, this is going to work. The one thing we don't do as far as the city is looking into what size systems folks are looking into. They work directly with the vendors on that for their own needs, and so we want to make sure that folks are understanding what they're really getting in a solar system here. And some of the things that are asked, and I think this is pretty standard when you're looking at how does my bill vary or why does it vary throughout the year? And a lot of that is time of year, so the amount of daytime sunshine we get, if it's cloudy, all those things factor in. How much electric usage does each household need? So every household's a little bit different. As I look through all the folks that have solar, it was a wide range of use. And so, it's hard to say. Hopefully they talk that through, and that's one point that I would stress if citizens are considering going solar, is to really ask those questions. Weather conditions, obviously, and then proper system maintenance. So one of the concerns that was brought to our attention by this individual was they didn't realize the breaker had been thrown on their side, and so they weren't producing anything. So the system was totally off for about a month and a half. We don't, we're not able to see that on our side, so they're getting billed their regular electric bill for instances where they just have no idea that it's not connected at the time. It's just like any other breaker in your house, if it trips, it basically turns it off. Some of the other factors that I wanted to share were, and I felt like it was important, were solar production. So a lot of these, and I actually had a gentleman come by Saturday, a solar salesman, chatted with him. And a lot of things that their engineers look at is where they mount those panels on the house. Most of them that I've seen are on roofs here in Lampasas. They can be mounted on the ground. But the angle of the solar has everything to do with how much generation you're going to, produce out of these solar panels. So one thing I wanted to share, and you can see on the slide, it's pretty important. So for us, we fall under the, if you look at the variation solar azimuth angle, and I won't get into too much detail on that, but Austin's on here. And so the degrees that we're really looking at for prime generation is a baseline of about 175, as you see here. We're the second line down, and it takes a pretty good dip, if you notice, in the summer. To approximately 130 degrees, 135 degrees is the prime angle. Most folks that have solar panels don't have solar panels that follow the sun. Like you'll see a lot of the big generation solar farms, it'll track the sun. So it's getting, as much generation as it can throughout the day, where most household solar units that are mounted on a roof, depend on the angle of that roof and the angle of the house, it makes all the difference on how much will you really produce and what are you using, how much is buyback, and I'll get into that in a minute. But for Lampasas, Texas, probably the best angle to face those is about 160 degrees to about 130. And working with this individual on his bill, it followed this very closely. You'll see that kind of on the bill. His solar production, and I'll get into that in a minute. We can't see what they're actually producing. We can see what they sell back to us, but the city doesn't see the portion that they're really saving. So basically, how our system currently works is we have a meter that's set for solar. There's 2 reads on there, actually 3 reads. We don't read the middle read because we don't have access to what they're generating. But the first read is energy that we're selling them, kilowatt hours. And so as it's running throughout the night, throughout the morning, once they start picking up solar, that meter stops. Then the individual solar panels pick up and start carrying over the household need at that point. And as it gets even, the meter stops on our side, and then it continues on for them. They can only see that piece. Once it gets to the point where they're now making more than they really need to use during the day, then that piece is sold back to the grid or sold back to the city.
Ryan, before you get too far gone off that, I just wondered, if we can't see what they're producing, do they get a report from whoever installed the units on their roof?
The individual that I talked to did. He does get, and he can actually print off what he's producing. So they have the ability to do that. I don't know that he was, before he really started looking into his bill, I don't know that he was checking that. And that's a really good point for folks to really look at that. If you have solar panels, see what are you really generating, and what's the basis of the savings that you're seeing, on your side, since we can't necessarily put a number on that since we don't know.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions on kind of the angle? Okay. So in the next slide, went into a little more detail and just briefly discussed this, but what I have is basically the azimuth angle direction, and this particular house was 200 degrees, and so you can basically see the solar credit read over here. It's the far right read. And it does kind of follow what we were talking about when you start getting away from that optimal angle in the summertime. When you get the most sunlight during the day, this individual was generating or at least selling back, the least amount of electricity to the grid, based on that angle on the house. So something to really think about, really consider, if you're looking into solar, if that is going to work best for you, and how many panels does that take to generate what your expectation is. I think that's another thing, to always ask when you have individuals selling those systems. We do not do net metering, and I'll try to explain it in a basic manner as far as net metering. What happens in not very many cities, and I'm not familiar actually with any cities in Texas, although I know there's some out there that do net metering. Most cities are similar to us, where they have a buyback, and ours is 5 cents. We're selling electricity at 11.3 cents. So it's basically our wholesale rate is what we're buying it at back. But net metering, when your meter's going forward, if you think of the old dial meters, what's happening is as you start producing energy, instead of the meter stopping like ours does, it stops and starts going the other way. So it starts counting off all the kilowatt hours that you're generating. And so it's almost as if you're saving some of your power for nighttime use. And unfortunately, speaking with some of the folks and even talking to the gentleman that had stopped by my house to discuss solar, they're under the impression that, hey, it's net metering. I'm not going to have a bill. The meter's going to roll back. And so everything that's generated and that I've made during the day is going to be there and available at night. So it'll pick back up, which is not what the city of Lampasas does. So kind of in terms of very similar meter. We just don't know what that middle piece is, and we're only crediting what they're producing over at 5 cents instead of the meter rolling back and you're getting basically credit for every kilowatt hour. Yes, sir.
The only one I know that's doing anything, and I don't know if they still are, is Rio Grande Valley. They did net metering for a while, and they just, because they're down there with so many heating degree days, it was something that they went ahead and set up, but I don't know that they're still doing it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not aware. If we could go to the next slide. I touched on this one just a little bit and tried to kind of explain that. So basically, as the power's provided, we're providing it at that rate, the 11.3 cents kilowatt hour. As you see at some point in the day when the customer goes to net zero, where they're solely on their own, running off of their solar panels, they don't need electricity from the city. That's kind of that net zero point. And then as they begin producing even more than that, then they move to the customer buyback, 5 cents, and it transitions back to the grid. Everything that's sold back is being used, so there's no storage necessarily on the grid. So I think that's another thing that I'm trying to share with individuals is, you're not necessarily storing and saving. Our system is not a backup generation type of system. The grid's not. It's being used as you push it back to the grid. So just something to kind of keep in mind. The next slide is basically, I just wanted to make sure I put in our current electric rates. Some of the things that even if there was a system where you didn't have a bill, basically, there would still be the minimal charges for customer service. Urban and rural there's a monthly fee. But none of the 31 individuals that have solar currently in the city, are net zero. They always have a bill. And I believe most of the savings average that I looked at was about $20 a month on average is what they're actually selling back. Now, the savings piece that I was talking about in the middle area that the city can't see, there's savings there. We just don't know what that is. But comparing, what I did was look at some bills before they had solar, in a certain month, compared it to after they had solar in the next year on that same month. And what we saw was, some savings, but not a significant difference. I think there was one individual that was almost cut in half their bill. So that was pretty significant, but that was only one. And the one that I looked at, that was numerous solar panels. They probably had one of the larger systems that I looked at. So that's kind of what folks expect. If you have a $118 bill, you're saving maybe $20 that you're getting, purchased back through the grid. So it's something to really weigh on those costs. And that was one of the things that I shared with the salesman is, make sure you're telling folks what's the return on their investment. If you've got most of the panels are 20, 25-year life on those. What's your time frame? If you have to, because he was saying they finance it just like you would anything else. So what's your real return? That's something you really want to know going in. And of course, some of these systems are, $20,000 to $30,000 just for the panels. I think the systems he was selling started around $25,000. So it's something to really weigh and consider when you're looking in solar. So if we could go to the last slide. And so, will I have an electric bill? Yes, there's still going to be an electric bill. What is the city of Lampasas' responsibility? We come out, put the new meter in once the agreement's complete, and then we will do the read monthly or thereabouts monthly. It depends on time frame. And then all the solar produced and used by the customer, household energy needs, like I'd mentioned, is not monitored by us, but it's the sole responsibility of the customer. And then one of the questions that I know comes up is, the buyback rate. And as I mentioned before, we're buying electricity at a wholesale rate. So we're, basically when citizens sell back their energy to us, we're buying it at the wholesale rate that we would typically buy at in that range, as well as the infrastructure. There's always maintenance costs. There's always infrastructure costs, staffing, those types of things. But the real piece is the wholesale. We buy it wholesale, and that's why it's 5 cents on the buyback. And I'll stand for any questions or thoughts.
Do we know if somebody doesn't come in and pull a permit or whatever, is there any way for our SCADA system on our electric to pick up any feedback to protect our employees? Is there any way?
If it's backfeeding?
Yeah, for us to see that one way or the other?
Yeah,
How can we, is there any way for us to catch that?
That is a good question for Wayne. I know there are some safety measures in the transfer switches on those systems to not let it feed back, but that doesn't mean it works every time.
Yeah.
It could feed back to the system, especially if you have battery backup. That, how that controls and monitors and switches. There could be an instance where it feeds back for a second or 2 seconds, unless it's not working properly, and then it could be back feeding all the time. But that was Wayne here. Wayne, would you like to respond to this?
We do not have any way of telling if it's not permitted. Our meters do not show kilowatts received from them. That's the reason we charge for the meter with the upgraded meter in as a residence. As far as the safety of it, most of the systems now automatically shut down when there's not a power source for it to sense, because it doesn't produce either. But if you're talking about a bootleg system that somebody's come up with, it'd be hard to say.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it.
And that's the same concern when we have power outages and people hook up generators.
Sure.
You don't want us
It's
working on a line.
obviously-
Right.
It's obviously, I don't want somebody out there to get on a line that's hot,
still
that didn't know
energized.
it.
Right. Any other questions?
Any other?
Mayor and Council, I might just dovetail what Ryan said, and as it relates to a question that Councilman Pierce asked previously, is what is the impact of us not selling those kilowatts to customers? And I think the quick answer, based on what Ryan has told you, is we don't have the precise data. I would suggest to you that it's not a huge, with 31 customers, based on the ability of some of these panels, it's probably not a very large impact at all. But in order for us to answer your question, we would either have to make assumptions or get better data, which I don't know if we can get you better data, but we might be able to put together some models of what it might look like.
About the permitting for these, do the people installing them automatically know they have to have a permit, or are you sending out word to the people that would install them?
We actually get field calls all the time. We're answering from multiple solar vendors. They'll call in and ask, because we have to send them an ordinance, the interconnection agreement, and the permit application. So they send it, they review it, they send us back the application, the agreement, and the specs, so we can review the specs through the electric department and through Mr. Ward.
But I guess there is that one that might just walk into town and put them up without telling anyone, I suppose.
I mean, of course it is possible, but because they have to have a specific meter and then a disconnect, it wouldn't be usable, I don't think, unless they could do a workaround.
Okay, so there's
Because we
that.
do have to swap meters, and they have to have a disconnect, so.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. That was a lot of good information.
Thank you.
And I believe, I'm sorry? Next up is discussion regarding city projects, Ryan.
Mayor, Council, have a few updates for you on some of the projects that have been ongoing. The skate park pad has been completed. Spoke with SPA today, and they're hopefully going to be on the ground somewhere around the 27th of December to get started. They'd already ordered all the steel pieces they needed for the rails and different things, so that's already on order. And actually, I think we have a materials on hand bill from them for that, but they're ready to hit the ground running. We actually met on site first of the week last week with one of their team leads that's going to be down here managing the project for SPA, and he was pretty impressed with the work that Harrison Construction had done in the pad work. There was a lot, while this is new to us, the SPA group does this pretty often, so they're used to kind of seeing pads built. They do a lot of their own, but the Dallas, who's their main project manager, said this one looked really good. As far as completion, if they do get down here around the 27th, they were saying, depending on weather, 3 weeks, a month, maybe sooner to have everything. But they'll be forming everything first, and then they'll be working through some of the curved areas, and the ramps will be shotcrete, so it'll be sprayed on concrete, and some of it will be conventional poured with forms. So it's going to be a pretty neat project to watch. The business park is about 99%. It's basically complete. There was a few items that we were still waiting on, hydrant plugs. And then I think the only other major item was just the storm drains needed to be grouted, as well as coating and sealing the manholes. So they were out there week before last cleaning a lot of the silt. There was a section of the road that has a fairly good grade as it comes behind the back of curb that had silted up in the road, so they cleaned that up. They've been out there kind of getting stuff prepped and finalizing things, so looks really good. As far as the Citric remote desktop, IT's been great. They've worked through some of the ups and downs trying to get this loaded and installed properly and working. And in fact, our city manager dropped off a laptop today with Citrix on it for our finance director. So we're excited about that. Folks will be able to work away when they need to. And most importantly, we'll be able to manage our work orders in the field from the public works side, as we go forward. So we're really excited about that. ExecuTime, and this is one our IT director has been working kind of hand in hand with Tyler Technologies. They've been asking for a lot of data, and so that's been provided on users and some of those other things. And basically, we're in the process of submitting some of the other initial project documentation, and complete and live, we're hoping, in the next 6 months. So that's our ExecuTime software, where we'll manage timesheets and we'll manage time off and leave requests and all those things that's tied in with our current Encode system. Hostess house remodel, I actually spoke with the architect, Antonio, last week, and currently, they had submitted us the 95% complete design, and the 100% design set's actually scheduled for December 14th. So this week, hopefully, they'll have the final plans to us for review. As far as timeline for bids, to open bids and to kind of work through that, we're actually working with Antonio and his team right now to kind of, they've proposed a couple dates and kind of some target dates to hit for bid proposals, allowing the interested parties that want to bid on this job time to get their bid in. This time of year, a lot of companies, you know, have the holidays coming up, work slows down a little bit, so talking with them, we felt like, you know, that first part or late January, getting the bid opening, kind of moving forward, but trying to have a 30-day window for the bid opening, so late February to close that and get all the bids in. But hopefully giving, you know, those contractors time to really put, there's a lot of detail in these plans, so you want to give them enough time to make sure they've got the subs, they can bid accordingly, and we get good price submittals. US 281 waterline relocation, that one actually went out for invitation to bid this past Friday, working with Eckerman Engineering. This is the one that's going to be the crossing at Naruna Road that's going to go under US 281. We also have an electric pole, one of our main feeder lines, designing currently with Schneider. So there's a couple things that we're having to do as far as utility relocates for this TxDOT project. But the plans are done for the water line, and we're getting those out for invitation to bid. So I think we're still, as far as on TxDOT's timeline, we're still making progress on that. Let's see, and then an update, as many of you have seen on 2nd Street, the Santa Fe Depot, we've completed all the utilities requested by the city, so electric, water, sewer, everything's connected now. Most recently, they've poured sidewalk in their driveway apron, so that part's complete. That's kind of in the right-of-way right now. They've completed the majority of that. They still have some tie-ins to make on the driveway apron, and then the interior work to tie everything in. So there's still a little bit there to do as far as in the city right-of-way. They've got there's an ADA accessibility connection that'll come. I went back and looked at the plans. That'll come from, if you're familiar with that brick sidewalk, there's a pretty good drop as you continue on where the driveway apron is now, but they're going to take an ADA accessible concrete walkway back behind that and come back and tie into the new sidewalk. So that was something I wanted to make sure we caught, but their engineer did a good job on that one. As far as the industrial park demo, just a quick update. WT Construction or Excavation was issued a notice to proceed, and then 10 days after to start work, which was November the 18th. And they actually started November 28th. They've made some progress. I've been out there taking some pictures, and so they're working through a lot of that concrete, breaking it up. Most of those large pads that were probably 4 foot tall were solid concrete. We kind of assumed that would be the case, and it was. So they're working through that right now. This is a 30-day project for substantial completion. So, and that's all the updates I have for you. If there's any questions, I'll stand for any questions.
Yes, Ryan, on Live Oak and 2nd Street, there's still cones there by Mr. Romans. What's happening there? Anything going to finish up anytime soon?
Yes, Mayor. The engineer has been working with the surveyor, so I think all the topography work, they've collected all the data. He's actually in the process of design, so we were going to redo that roadway full width, sidewalks like we did at 3rd. Tentatively, I did ask him schedule when we might have the plans, or at least maybe a 60% set of plans to start reviewing. And he'd mentioned it'd be sometime after the first of the year, you know, I'm guessing probably February time frame. Because I'd like to if we can get the design back and we can get to the 100% completion before the summer, since it is a paving project, if we were to let it, you know, early summer, that would give contractors more time as far as, you know, putting down the new asphalt surface and construction. But that project most likely will, with removing curb and gutter and sidewalk, is probably 9 months, maybe a 9-month project, so. But yeah, we are working on that, and that is a high priority for us because of the, you know, the failing old drainage structure that runs along the sidewalk there and the curb and gutter.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next item is discussion regarding the solar eclipse event 2024. Chief Smith?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I wanted to update everybody on the current preparation that has been going on, preparing for the eclipse of April 8th, 2024. The city began planning some time ago, back in the summer of 2021, and that planning still continues today. We continue to meet as small groups and also as large groups. This goes from the city level through the county level, Central Texas Council of Governments, Texas Department of Public Safety, and also the Texas Division of Emergency Management. So all those entities are involved in the planning of this still. As we go to meetings monthly that I attend for Homeland Security, more and more discussion is picking up on this matter. They're seeing that we are drawing closer, even though we're about, oh my goodness, 16 months away from this. No pun intended. I mean, we are getting closer to it all the time, and it's beginning to pick up a lot of speed on not just the local level, but on the state level also. So the city of Lampasas, in a small group, we've been meeting with great regularity to discuss what the city in and of itself is planning on doing, how we're going to accomplish a few things. Members of that group that's meeting, of course, the city manager, assistant city manager, chief of police Jody Cummings, IT director Monica Wright, library director Shanda Subia, and then of course me. We've also got representatives from the Chamber of Commerce. We've got Melissa Unger on that. She's the executive director. And then we also have Ross Oliver, the membership and events executive. This group has identified a few key goals to accomplish during this event. And this is a big thing as far as when this event comes here, we know that we have a lot that we can't plan for, but we know what the main objectives are that we want to make sure that we get nailed down and we do this right. And the first one is public safety for all the citizens of Lampasas and everybody that visits Lampasas during that day. We want to make sure that their public safety is taken into consideration, that we do those things right. The second thing, we want normalcy for our citizens. Not everybody is going to be that excited about the eclipse going on that day, and we want to make sure that they're prepared for what's going on. We want to make sure that they're aware that it's going on. And the big things is if that's the day, if they usually go to Walmart or H-E-B or wherever on Monday, we want to make sure that they are either willing to expect that there could be some delays, or that maybe we'll see if they can go a little bit earlier and get the things that they need if they don't even need to get out. But we want to make sure that we communicate with them that, hey, this is happening and we want you to expect these things, and traffic may be impacting your regular plan on that day. So this is how you're going to navigate that. And then the last thing, we want satisfaction and approval from the citizens that live here, and we want satisfaction and approval from those that visit our community. We want everybody to think, hey, Lampasas got it right. You can tell that they were prepared, and you can tell that they put a lot of thought into this. So those are our main goals on that right there, and those are the things that we're going to strive for with that. We've laid out a plan of a couple of benchmarks, and I'll just go through these real quick. If you need more details on that, I'll be glad to identify those in more depth. But in January of 2023, we're going to start with just the city in and of itself, all of our employees, getting them ready, getting them up to speed on all the things, educating them as far as how to handle an event like this. It's going to be the basic things like the National Incident Management System, the ICS 100, 200 classes, the 700, 800 classes. Y'all are familiar with those. Those are the little things that y'all have done once you got on council and say, hey, in the event of something major, this is what I need to know about how we handle emergencies like that. So we want to make sure that all of our personnel are up to speed on that. We want to make sure that all the department directors have those higher level classes. We're actually hosting one of those high level classes here January 16th through the 19th. That's an ICS 300, 400 class. That's not anything that y'all need to be involved in, but it is stuff that I need to be involved in, Chief of Police needs to be in, deputy chiefs, all the different department directors that are going to be responding to types of incidents during that event. They need to know how it goes out beyond just right here in the city of Lampasas. If we're needing to get help from somewhere, how do we go about getting that help? So those are events that are planned for January. As we go into April, that'll be a year out, and we want to have a town hall meeting, going back to what we discussed as far as making sure that everybody in the community knows, hey, this event's coming up. Whether you want it to or not, this event is coming up, and we need to let you know what we're doing as far as the plans that we're making to focus on those 3 items, and also to make sure that we're ready for this and that you're ready for this. So we want to have that ability to communicate with them. How are we going to communicate as we get closer? Those types of things we want to discuss in that town hall meeting. We're going to jump forward real quick to October. That's a 6-month thing. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to think about this for 6 months, but the next benchmark is going to be in October of 2023. In October 2023, we're 6 days from the event. We want to make sure that all the directors have all the contacts for assistance that we could possibly need or anything like that. We want to shore up all the phone numbers, all the cell phone numbers, all the emails, all those things like that. We want to get everything firm and everything like that 6 months out. We want to be able to know that what we're dialing up, what we're sending emails, we have the correct information and names. Let's see. Then we come into also developing the response plans for identifiable incidents. It's easy to type it out and not say it. But if we can sit here 6 months out and predict what could happen and how we could respond to that, we're going to come a lot better solving those same problems 6 months later if we already have the answer to the question before it's asked. So that's what's going on in October. We also want to do a tabletop exercise. We're going to take care of that tabletop exercise in November of 2023. We're going to follow up with an after-action review of that. We're going to identify what went well, what did not go well. We're going to make sure that all those things we've identified, that we've talked about, the training that we've had, we feel comfortable with doing that. January of 2024, we're going to finalize the plans for another, from the drill. The department directors should bring together a plan that will test the response of the city of Lampasas and a multifaceted response. We're going to make sure that we have all these things set and ready to go. We're getting closer all the time. We're 3 months out in January of 2024. February of 2024, we want to have that full-scale drill. Not just tabletop, but we want to be able to sit and make phone calls. We want to go out into the community. We want to check the radio systems. We want to check the telephones and that type of stuff and make sure that we're good, that we can locate things and go through that. This would be probably a half-day event. And we'll take the conditions as they are that day, the manpower as it is that day. This is what we have to work with. These are the other things that go on. Because the big thing to remember is just because we have this event here doesn't mean that we're not going to answer our typical 3.6 calls per day for the fire department. It doesn't mean PD is going to stop answering their calls. It doesn't mean electrical department's going to stop doing the things that they do day in and day out. So we have to be prepared in a larger scale incident to do these things and make sure that it's going to work. After that, we'll of course come back and look at the drill and see how we did on that, make some improvements and make some changes. March 6th, probably that's a month out, and we're looking at having another town hall meeting. The reason for that is, hey, we're a month away at this time. If for whatever reason you are not in the news, you're not in the know, you're living under a rock, we want to make sure that we get that information to you that, hey, this is coming. We'll also hopefully have more information from Texas Division of Emergency Management, Texas Department of Public Safety, Council of Governments. How are we going to join in together in a larger incident if something were to happen? Where are the resources going to come from? This could be similar to Winter Storm Uri in that there's a large area of this path where the eclipse is coming across, and our immediate help is not going to be able to be utilized because they're going to be going through the same thing as this. What has the COG done? What has the Department of Public Safety? What has the Division of Emergency Management done to increase that type of staffing outside of the area that we can call for if we need resources? So we want to review all that kind of stuff. And then the last thing is April 8th, 2024. Do we pray for a sunny day or do we pray for a rainy day? I think we need to pray for a sunny day. I think we need to behold all of it and see what's going on. And I think after it's all said and done, I think that y'all be proud of all the planning that we've done and how we responded to that incident. And everybody gives us thumbs up and the citizens think it was a wonderful thing. Does anybody have any questions over any of that? All right.
Thank you, sir.
You betcha.
Great report. Next item, discussion regarding any item on the regular agenda. Do we have anything? Going on, we'll adjourn the workshop session with a motion. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We'll now call to order the regular session. If no one needs to take a break, we'll just go forward. Chief Cummins, if you would give us a prayer, please.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight with open hearts and open minds. We ask for your guidance tonight in this meeting, and that you may help us to have information and to share it and to debate it and to make good decisions for the betterment of your people, which is the betterment of your will. We thank you for the gentle rains that came to us a few days ago, and we ask that you could see fit to bring us some more. We would appreciate it. As we come into the season of Christmas, we thank you specifically for your son, Jesus. We ask that you forgive us for our sins, watch over us in safety, and be with us till we can meet again. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please join me in the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. Pledge allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
At this point, we have a couple of proclamations and presentations. We have a couple of community champion recognition tonight. The Lampasas Police Department. A concerned citizen appreciates that their protection and help with community service. They unlock vehicles, help seniors put their life on the line for our good. Bless them. And of course, you do so much more than that, right? Becky's telling me to read from the microphone here, so we have Zach Carnley from Sneed Carnley Funeral Home, who's new back in town, right? Back in town. We like it when kids come home. Zach's been in business in Lampasas for just a few years. In that time, he has held numerous community collections. He's collected and donated hundreds of dollars in school supplies for local students who may not have what they need to be successful otherwise. Zach also holds a coat drive, and all coats go to the Lampasas mission to help our residents warmer, to keep our residents warmer during the winter. And this year, his second collection of gifts for senior citizens in nursing homes is wonderful, especially for some folks who may not have family. Whatever is not collected, he supplements on his own. Very commendable. Thank you. We're always excited to recognize community champions. Next item, annual city council recognition.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I have the honor of recognizing council for 2022. Please accept this token of appreciation as a thank you for what you've done for staff, citizens, and the community. Nobody understands better the challenges and accomplishments, no matter how big or how small, than city staff. You are our biggest supporter, our cheerleader, our voice of reason, and the one who has no problem putting us in check. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you for a great 2022. If y'all will come get y'all's token of appreciation.
We'll now go into the public hearing section. We have item 1 is citizen comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter not included on the agenda may do so at this time. The city council may not deliberate on items presented under this agenda item. We have no one. Item 2, citizen comments who desire to address the city council on a matter that is included on the agenda may do so at this time. No one? We now have a public hearing to receive citizen comments to consider granting a request to rezone property from Commercial C to single-family residential, SF6, described as being the west one-half of Lot 1, Block 2, East Lampasas, Lampasas County, commonly known as 1001 Bridge Street. Are there any comments?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mr. Harrell is the owner. He is asking the Planning Commission and Council to consider the rezone from commercial to single family. And we're also going to consider his plat as well with variances. So the property is currently zoned commercial. The area surrounding the property is commercial and single family. The Zoning Board of Adjustments did approve a variance to the lot depth from 110 to 104 at the November 15th meeting, which we will cover when we get to the final plat as well. All notifications and publications were mailed. We sent a total of 17 notices to property owners within a 200-foot radius, and we did not receive any in favor or in protest of the request. We did recommend approval through the Planning Commission at the December 1st meeting.
Does council have any questions or comments? Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Moving on, public hearing to receive citizen comments to consider a final plat with variances of re-subdivision of the west one-half of Lot 1, Block 2, East Lampasas, 0.25 acres, in addition to the city and county of Lampasas, Texas, commonly known as 1001 Bridge Street.
Mayor and Council, this is part 2 of the request from Mr. Harrell for this property. We are asking that we rezone it from commercial to residential, and then we are asking that the plat be approved as well with variances. And you will see that he is asking that we subdivide it into 2 lots, and they will conform to our zoning regs. Again, this item was heard at the Planning Commission on December 1st, and they do recommend approval.
Any comments from the audience or council? Public hearing to receive citizen comments regarding the submission of an application to the Texas Department of Agriculture for a Texas Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG. The purpose of this meeting is to allow citizens an opportunity to discuss the citizen participation plan, the development of local housing and community development needs, the amount of CDBG funding available, all eligible CDBG activities, and the use of past CDBG funds.
Mayor and Council, this is a requirement that we have to do in order to apply for a community grant. This is the opportunity for our public hearing to get citizen comments, and then as we move forward with the application phase, and this will be for a drainage project, hopefully, if we get awarded the grant.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing portion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. The minutes, discussion and possible action concerning approval of minutes of the regular meeting held on November 28, 2022.
I didn't see any corrections. Recommend approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda consists of 3 items. Discussion and possible action regarding purchases and charges in excess of $4,000 from November 1 through November 30, 2022. Discussion and possible action regarding the September 2022 investment report. Discussion and possible action regarding the October 2022 investment report.
Recommend approval of the consent agenda.
A second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is the city manager's operational report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a few brief updates. Staff did have a virtual meeting with staff from TxDOT regarding the airport planning project. That, as a reminder, is being funded primarily from federal funds with some local match, 10%. You may be asked to do a couple of things in the near future. One would be to appoint a project steering committee, and that typically is going to be a mix not just of pilots or advisory board members, but we'd also probably like to throw in a representative from the EDC, perhaps one from the chamber, so that we get a good broad representation on that project steering committee. The scope of the project will include a layout update plan, an inventory of assets, aviation forecasts, and the identification of long and short-term needs. TxDOT is responsible for actually contracting. We had a selection committee that ranked the applications or the proposals. We identified the number 1 ranked proposals, gave that to TxDOT. Now TxDOT will actually do the contracting for that, which should hopefully be done sometime later this winter. And it typically will take about 1 year from the time that that group is contracted and we have a kickoff meeting till we get a final product, and a final product that can be delivered to TxDOT for their approval as well. The railroad grade, and this is a result of a inquiry by the Mayor Pro Tem, but and some of you may not know this as well. Some that have kicked around a long time may have forgotten that we knew that we had this, but there's an old railroad grade that basically from the corporate limits is on the east side of 281 South, and comes across E.E. Omnis, comes through Brook Park, and actually goes on to Key Avenue just on the north side of O'Reilly's Auto Parts. And you kind of see it, some of you might think that that's a levee. That's actually railroad grade, a lot of it. A lot of that property has actually been conveyed, particularly on 281. Charlie Brown purchased that strip and that was through his property, et cetera. There was some concern raised some years ago because they had billboards on that property, and it was, you know, how do we get a hold of the property owner? And Georgetown Railroad. Those billboards have since been removed because of damage they received during a wind event. We had at one time, and this has been 2 or 3 years ago, made inquiry about the possible conveyance of that grade through Brook Park. And generally, I think, my recollection, I think, and what I communicated back then was that they were generally open to it, but it was going to be at a market rate. Well, he said, well, we maintain it for you. I said, well, you encroach on our property by the road that goes through it. And so we left well enough alone, which I don't think is a bad option for council to consider. It is on the property tax rolls. We do have a road that goes through it. So it may be a case where it certainly makes sense to leave well enough alone. However, if you'd like me to approach the railroad again, I'd certainly be open to that direction or any direction council asks me to do.
For years, it's been kind of a thing of a marketing tool because of where it sits. And of course, being an entrance from the south to Lampasas has always been thought of it being used as a way of, taking the people that come in that way. And now that we're doing 281 that direction, maybe, taking some marketing time for it. I don't know. I know we looked at this thing for 10 years, and maybe the best thing is just leave it alone. I know Christmas on the Creek would love to have it.
Is there any exposure to the city other than somebody coming in and buying it outright?
That could happen, but it's such a relatively narrow strip of
I
land.
know, it's not
Plus,
really.
our billboards and our sign regulations will not allow somebody to put up another billboard. So once it's damaged to the over 50%, which these billboards were, they cannot be replaced.
I could just see somebody buying it out of spite.
Yeah, it would, certainly it's a possibility, Councilman Clark, but doesn't seem that marketable just based on the size, shape, et cetera.
Do you know what it would cost us to get it, what was within our?
No, I do not, or if
We don't know what the market rate is.
That's correct.
Okay.
But again, staff is open to looking into it if you'd like. And certainly we can put it on a workshop agenda to discuss in more detail if you like. And so I'd be happy to, either now or in the future, just give me a call and we'd be happy to do whatever council would like to do. Just because we talk about it some more doesn't mean we have to do anything as well. Please let me know. You're going to see some items up in the next meeting or so regarding annual contracts. We have done this in the past related primarily to paving, emulsion, as well as curb and gutter. It does provide us maybe a more efficient way to start up a project so we don't have to, for each project, have to go out and do a bid for that type of work. We just want to make sure council's aware it does provide us some surety of future costs, but you also need to be aware that when we do a per unit bid for 12 months, the contractor sometimes will have to hedge in order to protect future increases in material and labor costs, if any. And of course, sometimes it goes the other way as well, but that's always a possibility when you bid like that. Certainly makes it much more efficient for us in terms of getting pieces of the project put together. Roofs and cars, Chief Cummings had the roofs looked at here on this block, Calvert Building, Police Department, City Hall. No appreciable damage was noticed. We will check the rest of the works, roofs as well. We'd also let you know that we have varying degrees of damage to our automobiles, and we're really taking a look at that on a case-by-case basis, depending on the amount of the deductible, the age of the units, as well as their use. And I don't want to disparage one department over another, but we want to make our police cars look good, professional. If we have a 12-year-old park or cemetery truck, that's one we may give a pass to. So those are kind of extremes, but that's kind of what we're dealing with, as I know a lot of you are dealing with at your houses over in your vehicles. EMS monthly report, I think that was included in your packet. Just of note, 151 calls in the city. There were 101 calls in the county. We also note the average response time in the city was 5 minutes and 24 seconds. And the report also highlights continued and cooperative training with the Lampasas Fire Department. First Street, and you may have gotten questions, you may have seen this and scratched your head. First Street and Key to the west of Key is pretty darn torn up. And that's a result of the construction project at the corner of Key and First Street. There have been some extreme elevation gaps and a number of cuts. The city has basically come out and told them that they're going to have to repave that. They're not necessarily going to have to go gutter line to gutter line. In one particular area, they will go gutter line to gutter line. In the other areas, they'll go crown to gutter line to match. But that's something that we've spelled out to them, and I know it wasn't in their project plan, but they can't leave the street that way, and we're not allowing them to do that. So if you do get questions about that, or if you've been curious, we will require that, and of course, just with any of our right-of-way work that's being done, particularly by contractors, we have staff on site basically start to finish. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to take just a moment to say my usual thanks, which is never enough, but on December 3rd, we had Carol of Lights downtown, and on December 10th, we had Christmas on the Creek out at W.M. Brook Park. A couple of nonprofits put that on. There was lots of community participation, but what I want to thank is all the city staff that made sure we did it right. We couldn't have done it without the police department. We couldn't have done it without the fire department. We certainly couldn't have done it without the parks department. Wayne, couldn't have done it without Wayne. The city staff themselves, everybody in the office. And I also want to say really good things about CP 333A, however you say their names, but that group was a tremendous asset to us as well, both events. And again, I can't say thank you enough, but that's all I've got, so thank you all for all that you do for us. Appreciate it. We have no unfinished business. New business. 7.1, discussion and selection of a website photo contest.
Mayor and City Council, there were 2 photo entries for the month of November.
I'd make a motion for entry 1.
Second.
We have a motion for entry 1 and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 7.2, discussion and possible action to consider approval, denial, or approval with modifications, the request to rezone property from commercial C to single-family residential, SF6, described as being the west one-half of Lot 1, Block 2, East Lampasas, Lampasas County, commonly known as 1001 Bridge Street.
Mayor and Council, this item was discussed during public hearing, and at this time, I'm asking for consideration to approve the first reading of an ordinance to rezone property from commercial to single-family residential, described as being the west one-half of Lot 1, Block 2, East Lampasas, Lampasas County, commonly known as 1001 Bridge Street.
I make a motion as read to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. 7.4, discussion and possible action to consider. No, said 3. Discussion and possible action to consider a final plat with variances of re-subdivision of the west one-half of Lot 1, Block 2, East Lampasas, 0.25 acres, in addition to the city and county of Lampasas, Texas, commonly known as 1001 Bridge Street.
Mayor and Council, this item was discussed during public hearing, and at this time, I'm asking for consideration of a motion to approve the final plat with variances of the re-subdivision of the west half of Lot 1, Block 2, East Lampasas, 0.25 acres, in addition to the city and county of Lampasas, Texas, commonly known as 1001 Bridge Street.
Recommend approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
7.4, discussion and possible action to consider vacate, abandon, and convey 0.24 acres, 60-foot wide of unopened Deb Lynn Street, east of South House Street, between Outlot 18 and Outlot 25 of the LHW Johnson Survey, part of 1003 South House Street.
Mayor and Council, this item was discussed previously as a public hearing at the November 14th meeting. This is exactly what Mayor Monroe stated, that we are currently looking to consider vacate, abandon, and convey the .24 acres, which is a 60-foot wide right-of-way of an unopened double-end strip that goes right between Outlot 25 and Outlot 18. We did go to the Planning Commission on December the 1st, which we did have a meeting, and they were requesting additional information regarding a 2007 letter. They wanted to make sure that no action was taken at that time. They felt comfortable with the information provided, and they do recommend approval at this time to vacate this easement.
Recommend approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions?
I just have one. Is there's a drainage ditch still on the north side of this property, right?
Right, but we discussed that if we had to do a survey for the drainage, it would be a quite substantial undertaking because of how much of it is. So we are,
Right, but this is on the north side. There's still one up there too, right? On both sides. There's a drainage ditch on both sides of that track.
I believe so. I believe it
I
runs
believe
through both
that's
the
correct.
properties.
Okay, that's the only question
Yes, sir.
I had.
Right.
And then, and then Outlot 25 will go to that property owner, right? That
The
section.
point, yes. We'll do that in a quick claim deed.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other comments? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thanks. 7.5, discussion and possible action to approve by resolution the request for waiver of local match funds participation requirement on federal off-system bridge program project.
Mayor, Council, this is a interesting project and probably one that's long overdue. The 3rd Street Bridge there at Burleson Creek. TxDOT actually reached out to us. It's on their bridge replacement list. And it's an MBI or a National Bridge Inventory Structure. They do quite a few off-system bridges. We've got 4 basically within the city limits that they've identified as basically off-system bridges that are on the National Registry, but they monitor. So I think it's yearly or every other year there's a BRINSAP group that does inspections, which is basically a bridge division group out of Austin, and they monitor, reevaluate all the bridges around the state. But this particular project is estimated at $540,000, $858.12. Our match is 10%, and so our match for this project actually has some other project management fees assessed, which was a little over $2,000, but our total match fund to do this project is $56,507.19. But what makes this project a little bit unique is they're allowing us to do an in-kind match. So basically, if we can do the work to improve some of the other structures, not this one because this one's going to be replaced, but there's 3 other bridge structures. I've put in the packet cost estimate. They're allowing us to use our costs for staffing, including benefits. They're allowing us to use our equipment numbers, vehicle numbers, as well as time frame and the materials. So what I did was I looked at the other bridge structures and determined that the 2 bridges on Western, the one that goes over the creek at this end, and there's one at the north end of Western. I believe that's Burleson Creek there too. But we looked at those with the street superintendent. We walked those, tried to get a realistic opinion of what kind of work can we do. And so some of the things that were identified on, I had them send me the bridge reports for those bridges, was erosion around the abutments of the bridge, so around the base of the bridge where the creeks cut through was highly eroded. So placing riprap, regrading some of those slopes, placing riprap with our staff and our equipment and our forces, basically brought us to an amount of $59,943.65. And that's our in-kind match, so we're a little bit over. Again, I would note that what we submit to TxDOT, which are these estimates, are solely that. This actually is a resolution required by them to move this forward. What'll happen if they say, yes, we approve this in-kind match, we agree, then they will send us the AFA or the agreement to move forward with the project. So they're currently designing this bridge. I think most of it's been designed. It's fairly small. I think right now it's probably about a 30-foot, 40-foot span. But it's I think, beneficial to the city to save those dollars and use our staff and our equipment to do some of these repairs that we can do, that we feel confident we can go in there and do. So I'll stand for any questions.
Is the Third Street Bridge going to have bike lanes also?
Could we get a motion first?
Okay. Move to approve.
Have a motion? Do I have
A second.
have a motion and a second? Any questions?
Now, is the Third Street Bridge going to have bike lanes added also? I think I read that somewhere in some of the correspondence.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, the engineer that I spoke with out of the Brownwood District, I did ask what's that cross-section going to look like? What are we looking at for the roadway width? What's going to be the improvement? He said at a minimum on these new bridges are about 31 foot as far as the width of so you'll have 2 travel lanes, 3-foot shoulders, but they're also looking into sidewalk on this bridge and possibly bike lanes. So those things are being considered in the design right now. I feel like that's probably a pretty critical piece for future, because you want to plan on the future and connectivity from that residential area to downtown. So, but they are looking at different aspects of that design.
Any other questions? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go, just want to wish everybody Merry Christmas. Hope you have a good holiday. And we could get an adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's go home.